Hello.
Hey, how's it going?
Good. Podcast number 2.
Number two. So first one was got some pretty good feedback on it. Lots of friends,
Yeah,
family, some loyal subscribers on our YouTube channel were like, that was really good. I enjoyed it. Some people were like, oh, I just put it on in the car. Or,
stuff like that.
today is gorgeous outside. It's gonna hit
It,
double digits, 13. The snow's all
I
gonna melt.
know.
And
It's so exciting.
let's hope this is the beginning of what we want, right?
Oh
So
my gosh. I ended up taking my dog out for like an hour long walk this morning and I like crushed half of my step goal for the day. So I'm
love it.
like feeling good and refreshed and like ready to
But when we're
go.
done this, go do another one. Right? It's gorgeous. It's
I know
gorgeous.
I may go out because it's honestly just too beautiful to miss. So we should probably introduce ourselves
Yeah,
because
I'm
if people are
Angelo.
just
Tuning in. I'm Angelo Mancios, financial consultant behind thevault.net, and I've been a financial consultant for the better part of 12 years. And you are?
I am Sam Ballard or Samantha Ballard, which whatever you feel like calling me. I don't know how I introduce myself. And I am what did we call me? The producer
The
of
producer of
everything.
everything. Correct.
Everything. I like that
Producer of
title.
everything.
I'm seriously gonna get some business cards that say that. So when I introduce, I'm like, hey,
Let's make them.
producer of everything.
Producer of
Love
everything.
it.
So
I love it.
yeah.
So today, what are we going to talk about today, Angelo?
Well, though I had a conversation yesterday actually with a good friend of mine about budgeting. And she's a single mom. She was watching a few of the videos on our YouTube channel. So you can go to youtube.com right behind the vault. And she was saying to me, she finds it a lot more challenging as a single parent when it comes to budgeting and keeping everything in check. So it was really interesting because I said to her, well, how'd you do it before? And she said, well, before my husband worked and I stayed home with the kids for a while. So we were on one income and then we were on two incomes towards the end. And, when we were on two incomes, boy, what a great luxury that was, right? Because when you're on two incomes, you still only have one set of expenses, right? It's not like the bank calls you up and says, oh, I hear your spouse has gone back to work, so now we're going to double your mortgage, right? The mortgage payment stays the same.
Can you imagine though if they're like, congratulations, you get to
Well,
split finance.
could you imagine if if we have to pay for stuff based on a percentage of our income versus dollars and cents, right? Like you got to think of people who, donate to their church or synagogue or mosque, right? So in some faiths, and not to get all religious, but in some faiths you have to, you donate what you want. In others, it's a percentage of your income.
No way, really?
Yeah, it's a percentage of your income. So that you have to turn in your T4 and they say, okay, well, you make 150 grand a year, so your donation to the churches or the synagogue or the mosque is 15 grand. Yeah.
That's insane.
Well, I mean, I don't know how insane that is. I mean, that's how it works. And
but like, what if you have like 10 kids and you still have to donate a percentage of it? That's
hey, listen,
insane.
I don't want to get into a religious conversation, but I think the answer is something like God will help you find a way, right?
Okay.
So,
okay.
Actually, what's interesting, to pivot a little bit, some really great advice I got from somebody when I had my third child was, I was talking to them and I said, I'm really worried, with another child and, it's another mouth to feed, another kid to raise, another university bill. And she said to me, she said, you know what? She says, what was her exact words? It's something like, life will find a way. Like you will just naturally make it work because of the love you have for that child. You make it work. And it's true. Right. I mean, I think to myself, oh, I'd have so much more money if I didn't have kids. Right.
Yeah.
I don't know how true that is. I know people say that kids are expensive and they are, don't get me wrong. But you know what? I've got clients that don't have kids. And guess what? They spend their money too. They just spend on other stuff. They spend on themselves.
I had someone that I dated a few years ago who very much so was like, oh, it's like $1 million a kid. And I was like, pardon? That's how he approached having kids was it's $1 million a kid. And I was like, okay, fine. But like, it was just like anyways, these are very strange.
I don't know about $1 million.
Uh,
That's a bit, I think it depends on your lifestyle, right? I mean, I will tell you this, when the third kid came along, we had to go from, the car to the minivan,
right.
right? I mean, we went from we had a Mini Cooper, then we got a Toyota Matrix, and then we got a Toyota Sienna because we
Toyota.
needed,
Props on
you
Toyota.
know,
I'm a Toyota girl
listen,
myself.
I'm not gonna, it's a good car, whatever, right? But what's
Love my
interesting is
Toyotas.
that when we had the third child, that that became a consideration, is because, well, what are we going to do? We can't put 3 car seats in the back row of the Matrix,
Yeah.
right? I mean, kids don't take up a lot of room, but their stuff certainly does,
Yeah.
right? So, but I'll tell you, and if let's use this as a budgeting tip. So, budgeting tip number one, one thing that we did is we were very fortunate. Number one, we had 3 boys, right? So I got 3 boys. Number two, there was a lady in our neighborhood who also had 3 boys. And her boys were also 2 years apart, but her youngest and my eldest were 2 years apart. So while all the clothes went down from the eldest to the middle to the youngest, she would then bring us those clothes and say, listen, my kids have outgrown them, have at it.
Awesome.
Right. And, and as we passed it down from our oldest to our middle to our youngest, some stuff would, get tattered, some stuff you'd throw
Of
out,
course.
they
Yeah.
just wouldn't make it. Right. But let me tell you, we significantly reduced our clothing bill. And then what we did is we bundled that stuff up and we found another family
So
who
donate it
had
to.
boys and said, okay, here
Awesome.
you go. So that, you make these alliances with these families. And, with our first, I mean, we did everything brand new. It was like,
Yeah.
oh, brand new bedroom set, brand new this, brand new that. And then we're like, are you kidding me? These kids grow out of clothes so fast. It's not even worth it. So we were so fortunate. And then what we did is we found, as we started talking to our circles of friends, who had, older brothers or whatever, clothes started showing up at our door.
Wow.
And, listen, I'll tell you, people were more than happy to get rid of those clothes. They were more than happy to see them out of their basement or
They're
garage or
outgrown,
whatever,
right?
right?
Yeah.
Because they're outgrown. And then we were happy to take them, wash them, some fit, some didn't, whatever, and pass them down. And then when
Send
we
them
were done
again.
with them, pass them off to someone
Fun.
else, right?
Do you know
So
what's funny is the bedroom set? It was my bedroom set when I was a kid. My sister had it and then I had it, and it was in the basement for I guess 10 years. And then one of our neighbors, they were an older couple to have a baby in their 40s, and they were having a baby. So my mom was like, it's in
here you
great
go.
condition. So but we actually 2 years ago, she asked if my mom wanted it back, which I thought was really funny.
That's sweet.
Yeah, which is really sweet. She's like, we obviously don't need it. It's sitting in our basement. We should have given it back to you a while ago, but like, do you want it back? Cause it's been, gosh, at least 10 years probably.
Is that your mother's way of saying,
saying have kids?
Is that a hint?
No, actually, do you know what's funny is my mom wasn't, I guess she took it back. This might've been, maybe it was 5 years ago. And then she took it back, and about 2 years ago, she was going to give it to someone else. And I was like, Mom. And she's like, well, I don't think you guys are going to have kids. And I was like,
oh,
I'm not that old that I can't have
not
kids.
yet, yeah.
Thank you very much. So I made her hold on to it.
That's awesome. You know what's interesting is that, so when my first was born, my mom actually bought the bedroom set, and she bought this crib where the side rails of the crib turned into a headboard footboard for a double bed.
Cool.
So my eldest went through it, and then he moved to a big boy bed. And then my middle went through the crib. He moved to a big boy bed. Then my littlest went through the crib, went to a big boy bed. And by the time my littlest went to a big boy bed, my eldest was ready for a double. So we got him a double, and we already had the headboard footboard, and we just
ready. Cool.
done. It was done. Now we had to obviously get for the other two eventually when they got older and whatever. But like it was a practical buy, right? I mean, the bedroom furniture that we got for our kids, it's still there, right? And the stuff I have them I have for them here is it's going to last a while for them, right?
Well,
So
and I mean, you can sell this, especially now, like the amount of stuff I ended up moving halfway through the pandemic, and there's things that I just didn't need anymore, or there's things that I held on to that I was like, I have no use. I haven't used this. It's still in good quality. So I sold it on like Facebook Marketplace for a
sure,
lot of money. I ended up
get rid of your clutter.
yeah,
Get
and
rid of your clutter,
another
right?
exactly. And because some people may have a use for it that you didn't necessarily. And I actually was talking to a neighbor of mine who they're actually moving to BC. So they sold all of their furniture, they sold everything, and they ended up selling it. There ended up being like a bidding war for some of their pieces because production now, because everyone is home all the time, they're now, wanting to update their places. They're caring a little more about what their house looks like. So it's really funny because they ended up selling their stuff for a profit now because people are waiting months to get like a dresser. I mean, I was looking
Right.
into a dresser just because I need one, and I'm not going to get it until 6 months if I order it
Oh my
now,
God.
which is like
Listen,
insane.
you're preaching to the choir. I bought my house,
Oh
what,
yeah,
a
that's
day?
true.
Remember, I bought the house the day before everything shut down last March.
That's
So
true.
March
Yeah, you
23rd,
did.
the markets crashed, everything shut down. March 22nd, I signed the deal. And then I moved
Jeez.
in April. And then, yeah, good luck trying to furnish a house during a pandemic when everything was closed, right? And then things were
Jeez.
back ordered, and you know, it was tough. I mean, we made it work, right?
Yeah, I mean, you have it furnished now, so you may.
It's furnished, sure. Yeah, it's furnished. Need
It's
some
for,
artwork,
but you know what, in terms of budgeting though, this is actually, I love budgeting. I always talk about
I
doing
know it's
budgeting
your
things.
thing.
I am like such a budgeter. I love sales. I love discounts. That's my thing. But in terms of that, a really good advice that my mom gave me is what she and my dad did when they bought their kind of forever home. Well, obviously it didn't end up being their forever home, but it was their forever home for kind of my childhood and growing up. And they slowly built their house because they put the down payment on building this beautiful house, bought this beautiful house, but didn't have any money left to furnish the house.
Oh no.
I mean, they did, but not to the extent of how my mom wanted it. So it was interesting because they like had a couch, and they slowly throughout the 25 years of living there, they slowly built the house into what it ended up being. So, they buy a coffee table here, they buy something here,
Totally.
a piano came in, and they
Totally.
like it was an empty house. And then as time progressed, my mom inherited a few pieces and the house ended up really full. But it was the idea of, you don't have to have everything now. You don't have to have it
Right.
full. You don't have to buy,
And
wait
you know
until
what?
you can fit it in your
Yeah.
budget.
And you know what? Like for me, I mean, like I mean, it's so recent in my memory, right? Because it just happened. But I looked at last year, and my goal last year was just to get sort of the basics in the house: kitchen table,
Bed.
beds. Right? Well, we had beds the first night, right? So we were good on beds the first night,
Good.
sheets and all that. So right now, I sort of looked at 2020 and went, okay, so the house is pretty much furnished. I've got some coffee tables. I need a few more pieces, here and there, some accent pieces that, once stuff starts to open up, I'll start, Saturday shopping again, and taking advantage of the beautiful weather and
Browsing.
it's fun to walk around with a water cash in your pocket going, do I want that? I don't know. But the thing is now I'm sort of shifting my focus and going, okay, so what sort of upgrades can I now add, right? So I've, we're at sort of, stage one is sort of complete. Stage two is going to be, like for example, in my living room, I want to put up that stone wall with the fireplace, right? And then start getting the family pictures up there,
Right. Yeah.
boys and all that stuff, right? And start to transform it into a home. But you know what? The house is very functional, and my friends don't come over and are like, well, I mean, nobody comes over now, but you know what I mean? In the summertime when things were
Of course.
open and we were
Yeah.
allowed, nobody walked in and went, oh, you don't have absolutely every piece. This is brutal. I'm not coming back. Nobody cared, right? And what's really great in the day and age that we live in now is between Facebook Marketplace, Kijiji, Craigslist, like whatever, you have so much more access to people's
Absolutely.
stuff that they want to get away. Like 30, 40 years ago, what'd you do? You had a garage sale, and you just kind of put up signs in your neighborhood, and people came and sort of looked at your stuff. Now
Yeah.
you can have a garage sale whenever you want, and people from miles away will come, right?
Yeah.
They'll come, right? It's it's
Incredible.
great. I mean, it's so easy to buy and sell stuff now. You basically just need a phone and a camera,
That
and you're all
Yeah.
set, right?
Do you know what I find funny is I actually am now, and this is a conversation I actually had with one of my best friends. And it was when we kind of both hit 25, because we did the IKEA thing. I'm not saying there's nothing wrong with purchasing IKEA
Nothing at all.
whatsoever. I mean, their kitchens are fantastic. There's so many great pieces, but the only problem is that when I was moving, the bookshelves would fall apart. That's the one thing, is IKEA is not
Right,
meant to sustain a really long time unless it's the higher quality version of IKEA, which is like their kitchens and the things like that, right? Like they're
right.
not, especially like 5 or 6 years ago, they weren't made as like, they weren't known as like great furniture that lasts forever. It was more as a cheaper option to fill
A
your house or
starter,
student
like a
housing. It was
transition. Yeah, totally.
Exactly. And that was the one thing, is that Catherine, we always bought kind of a lot of IKEA stuff, things like that. But as I started getting older, I started replacing the pieces with a little more expensive pieces that I'm all about the forever home thing. It's a big dream of
Right.
mine. So now I start buying little pieces that maybe are a little more on the expensive side, but I decide that I want them. And then I wait until they go on sale. And I have a list of an
Or
order
you
of
wait
kind of a necessity,
until
or
somebody
I,
sells it on
until
marketplace or whatever, right?
exactly.
Yeah.
So like even my buffet table, I waited. I knew I wanted one. It was the brick. I think it was like a $1,500 piece. And oh boy, did I wait. I probably waited a year and a half to purchase that when it went down. And I ended up getting it for, I think, more than half price off, because I just waited.
Well, I
I was
think you know
so
what,
patient.
and I think in today's day and age, that's the stereotype, is that people today, and it doesn't matter what age you are. We live in an instant gratification world where
Yeah.
you can get it now, right? And if we bring it back to budgeting and tips around budgeting, maybe take a look at where your income is, and how much you can allocate for things like upgrading furniture, painting your house, knickknacks here, and stuff like that. Because as as great as it is that we can go online and find the things that we want pretty easily, it's also a bit of a curse,
Yeah.
because it could be 2 a.m. and you could have maybe had a few drinks, and all of a
Yeah.
sudden that gimmicky
Amazon.
thing, that
That
no, not even
Amazon.
Amazon. I would argue that gimmicky thing on Facebook or Instagram or whatever. I'll give you an example. Last night I was on
Did you
Facebook.
do it last night? Is that what
Hear,
happened?
hear me out. I didn't do it last night. I wasn't drinking or anything like that. But last night I was on Facebook, and this ad came up with this little contraption that pours 6 shots at the same time.
Huh.
So you pour it into the main thing, and 6 shot glasses fill up. And the
Yeah.
picture in my head was, it's summer, we're sitting around the pool, we're all having a good time, and it's like, oh, let's have some shots. And instead of me sitting there pouring 6 shots, I could just once, and it's kind of cool. People be like, oh, this is cool. So I looked at the ad and I watched the little video, and the thing was like $70 or something like that after tax and shipping. And I was like, wait a second, right? And then I hopped onto Amazon and I typed in 6 shot dispenser, and there it was for $16 on Amazon, or $22 on Amazon, or $30 for a higher quality one, right? So as easy it is to fall into that marketing when you're
Brand.
scrolling, right?
Yeah.
It's like, check your prices, right? Just like we talked about at Christmas,
Do
be
you
a
know what
bargain hunter, do the same thing. Or maybe go into Kijiji, because maybe somebody bought that last summer and was like, yeah, the novelty wore off after like 3 times. It was kind of annoying, and it's a pain in the ass to clean. So now maybe you get it for $10 instead of, right?
However, yeah,
So
that's actually something that I do. My sister didn't really believe me until she saw it in action. We ended up going to the grocery store, and this was a few months back, and I needed some vitamins. And I had like a list of things that were like you could purchase at Shoppers, or you can get them online or whatever. And I literally was like, okay, so, and like even deodorant, even like I was down to that much. And this is how much of a bargain hunter I am, as I literally was looking at the price on like at the store when I was there grocery shopping. And then I go on Amazon or go on, you know, whatever store and see if I could find it cheaper. Because, you know, say this was on sale. Is this actually cheaper than buying on Amazon? Nope. Amazon's cheaper. I have Amazon Prime. It's free shipping.
Done.
Okay, I'm going to go for the cheaper option and save myself $5 because in the end, that $5 can go towards, you know, my dog's
Anything.
food or,
You can go towards anything other than the toilet bowl, right? And if you do that 100 times in a year, it's $500.
Yeah.
Right. And when Christmas rolls around and you're like, oh, I got to buy Christmas gifts now.
Yeah.
Well, if you've saved $500,
there you go.
There you go. Right. So, you know, it's interesting because getting back to the conversation I had with this lady last night about, you know, being a single mom and she's got 3 kids and, you know, she's finding it difficult, whatever. One of the things she admitted to me was when she was married, her ex-husband took care of all the finances. So he paid all the bills, he negotiated the mortgage, he renewed the car payment, he took care of the car and home insurance. So she was just like, oh, well, he takes care of all that. I don't have to worry. Well, here's the thing. You're not together anymore. And now you don't realize what stuff costs. You know, when my mom and dad were together and raising their family, the way they figured it out, and listen, budgeting is different for everybody and how you approach it. You know, some people have like one bank account and everything goes into there and, you know, everything comes out and you both see sort of what's left over. You know, some people have the communal bank account and then each person has their own bank account. So their income goes into their own. And then what they do is they fund like the house account.
Yeah.
Right. That's how my ex and I used to do it. Because then if I were to get her something for Christmas, she wouldn't know what I spent. Do you know what I mean? Or if it came up on the Visa, it's like, oh, what's this? Oh, that was your Christmas gift, you dumbass, you know? So, but what my parents did was kind of unique. My dad took care of all the big stuff. So he took care of like the mortgage, the car payments, the insurance, kids' education. My mom took care of groceries, clothing, vacations, and sort of the extras. Right. So when my mom got sick and my dad had to carry the load, he was floored at what stuff costs. He's like, how much did you spend on clothes? How much did you spend on groceries? And he just, it wasn't because he was cheap, right? He just didn't know. And when you go from like, I think they got married when my dad was in his mid-20s. Well, when you go from living on your own in your mid-20s, right, to now you're in your mid-40s, it's 20 years later, and somebody tells you that this shirt costs this, when the last time you remember it, it cost what it cost 20 years ago, it's a huge adjustment, right? So big budgeting tip, right? Flash it on the screen or whatever, red flag it, write it down, not if you're driving, is be engaged with your partner. Know what stuff costs, know what, know what you're getting and, know how to negotiate your mortgage, know how to work the rate, know how to, pay a bill online, know how to do all these things because you be like my dad was the typical European dad that would walk around the house and turn all the lights off, right? Oh, it's so expensive, the lighting bill, because he paid it, right? And it's so funny now with my kids leave the lights on. I'm like, guys, turn the lights off. I mean, electricity is so cheap, but at the same time, why waste it? You're not in the room. Like my dad, I would be reading a book in the family room. My dad would walk in and turn the light off.
My dad did that too.
I'd be like, hey, I'm reading. He's like, I didn't know you were in here. Sorry, right? Use a flashlight or something, he'd say jokingly. But again, the big piece is be engaged with your partner. So that, you guys sort of have an idea if one of you gets sick or if you guys split or something happens and you have to carry the load. It's not this big, oh my goodness, I didn't know we spent crazy this thing on this and this, right? And I know, listen, I know couples that, and my clients do it. They have family meetings once a month. They do like a State of the Union. So what they'll do is they'll go out for dinner, they'll crush a bottle of wine, and they'll be like, all right, here's where we're sitting right now, right? They treat it like a corporation, and they say, okay, this is what we bought this month. This is what we didn't buy. This is what we bought. This is what we didn't buy. This is what we saved. This is what we need to pay down. Here are some of our goals, and it really keeps them aligned. As much as people think that couples fall out of love, and that's what breaks up relationships. It's up there. But I will tell you, the number one thing that kills a relationship is money. People just not being aligned.
It's funny you say that because my boyfriend and I have talked about moving in. And of course, within that, we've talked about how much things cost. I mean, we're both in our 30s, so we're well aware of how things cost. We pay our own
Right.
bills. We're both self-sufficient on our own. But like, even in terms of, how much does Darcy, my dog, Darcy, cost to, how much on a month do you spend on your dog? And it's not that he, it was any judgment or anything like that, but he was just like, I'm just curious because I want to know in terms of like budgeting, how much does your hydro cost you? How much just as an idea, we've talked about grocery bills. He eats like 2 times the amount that I eat. So that's something he's a growing man.
Big dude. He's a growing boy.
He's a growing boy. So, but that's the thing too, right? Is we're like, okay, like how would we figure this out? How would we figure out the finances? And in terms of the bank account thing, that's actually something we brought up this weekend. We're like, okay, well, how would we do this? Should we have like a joint bank account? And I said, absolutely, we should have a joint bank account, but I do want to keep this separate just because, I think it's smart to have the separate income coming in, and then you can pop a certain amount into, whatever fund,
That's it. And you know what? It's not that hard because all you've got to do is come up with a list, and it's so easy, right? You just draw 2 lines on a piece of paper and make 3 columns. And it's me, you, us, or me, us, you, right? Yeah. So for example, Darcy, I would say that's your responsibility. It's your dog. You got him right now. Your boyfriend may be like, okay, no, I'll pitch in. That's fine. And no problem. But if we were objectively doing this, Darcy would be his responsibility or your responsibility.
Yeah.
And then maybe he puts in more for groceries. Because,
we're going to make golf his responsibility. He's a big golfer. Okay. So we're going to we'll put Darcy the dog in mine, and we'll put his golf
on his. Well, that's what I'm saying, right? It's looking at it, and I'm a big fan of the communal account, and then each person having their own.
Yeah, my parents did that.
What that safeguards you from is if you're a saver, if you're responsible with your money, etc. If let's say, for example, between you and Dave, it was like, I don't know, let's say it's $4,000 a month is what you need to run the household. I'm just making a number up. So you know that you got to put in 2, he's got to put in 2. And that'll cover all the expenses. Now, if from your remaining income, if you're a saver, if you've got adequate insurance, if you're living within your means and you don't go crazy into debt, you're protected. Right. If he's not, and I'm not making judgments, I'm just using it as an example.
No.
If he's not though, and he can't scrape together 2 nickels because he's irresponsible, well, 2 things are going to happen. One, you as the person in the relationship are going to be like, is this fixable? Because if we're going to get married and have kids, and he's not responsible with money, that can be a huge problem. It's not a problem now when, we rent a condo and we're young and we're whatever. It could be a problem when you buy $1 million home or a $700,000 house.
Totally.
And you're raising 2 or 3 kids.
Exactly.
Right? So it gives you some security. It gives you some, and you start to work together as a team. Right?
Well, and it's interesting because especially as an adult now and in our early 30s, that's actually something that was very important to the 2 of us when we talked about. It was, how do you approach money? How do you approach it's important, right? Because if you have someone who is, spend, that's not exactly responsible for a life that you kind of want to build with someone.
Well, unless you have the money to do it. Hold on. If you got the money to do it and you're living within your means and you want to live la vida loca, that's your business.
Yeah. So let's pause it out between. So when people aren't living within their means, so that's what I mean. Okay. Who aren't, who don't think about it, who don't, that is something, especially for me, it's very important. I'm all about like, you walk into my condo and I will tell you a sale I got on every single item that I own in it. Nice. And I will have a story and that's just when I'm grocery shopping. I'm very like, I'll pick the apples that are on sale. I'm not saying that I don't have those moments where I go and I purchase something that, maybe, but I'm very, very frugal and I make sure that I know what I'm spending my money on.
I think it's important to be frugal and responsible for certain things.
Yeah.
So that it allows you to be irresponsible on other things. So
Yeah.
for example,
Agreed.
I was at the grocery store the other day and my kids love bagels, right? I will buy the bagels that are 30% off because it's like the last day or the second last day. But I'll bring them home and I'll toss them right in the freezer.
Yeah.
Bang, right away, right into the freezer. And then when I'm making lunches, I just pull them out of the freezer, defrost them, toast them up a bit, and they're good. No problem.
Yeah.
Why on earth? Now people will say, oh, come on, Ange, bagels are what, like $2? So you save like 40 cents. I got 3 boys who love bagels. Do you know how many bagels I'm going to go through in the next 15 years?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
But you know what? When I was furnishing the basement and I put together the theater room that I have, I was able to justify that cost of the 120-inch screen with the projector and the lazy boy seats because I was responsible in other areas. And let's be frank, when I bought the seats, I got them off Kijiji from a lady
Yeah,
who
you
was
told me.
downsizing because she was living beyond her means. And she showed me the invoice. She spent 10 grand on those seats.
Wow.
Plus tax because they were custom made for her house. And I'm picking them up for $2,500. Right? The speakers that I got brand new would have been 6 grand. I picked them up for 1,500. Right?
Mm-hmm.
Even the projector from Amazon. You know, a friend of mine, she introduced me to this guy who's a big IT techie guy. And he's like, just buy this one. It's about $700, but it'll never let you down. Okay. So I bought it. It was Mother's Day. I'll never forget this. It arrived 2 days later without the manual. So I was like, oh, there's no manual. So what I did is I went online to Amazon to check like the exact model number so I could see if I could find a manual online.
Yeah.
Well, didn't the price drop from $700 to $350? I was furious.
Wow.
Furious. I'm like, are you kidding me? So I called Amazon up and I'm like, no, that's not cool. And they're like, oh, well, it's a different seller. I'm like, no. I go, I could return this one today, get my $700 back and purchase this one for $350 and it'll arrive in 3 days. I go, are you going to really put me through that hassle? They're like, nah, here's the difference. And I was like, rock on, Amazon. Thank you so much.
Nice.
So I mean, you know how many people would have been like, oh, well, I guess, I missed it. So I'm not going to call. I don't want to bother anybody. I don't want to be a bother. Are you kidding me? That was $350. And It's not like, look, it's not like $350 is going to make a massive difference in the course of anybody's life, right? If you stretch that out, if you go, oh, well, in life, if you lose $350 because it fell out of your pocket, it's not going to make or break you for eternity. But it's still $350. And why on earth should they have it when I worked for it and I earned it, right? So it's that being responsible is so important. And people are like, oh, I'll just splurge. It's not a bad thing to splurge. It's not a bad thing
not
to
at
go
all.
for a nice dinner. And listen, I've dropped $300 on dinner before, but I don't remember the last time I did that. Okay, I mean, pandemic aside, right? So, but it's not very often.
Yeah.
Right? It's got to be like an occasion. Like we're celebrating something if I'm going to the top of the CN Tower or if we're going for steak and lobster or whatever.
But then that also makes those moments better, right? So the big thing for me, and this sounds so silly and it's so Canadian white girl in her 20s. Starbucks was my thing. I love Starbucks. I actually didn't drink coffee until I moved to New York. And then when I moved to New York, someone introduced me to Starbucks and it was done. It was done. It was that was it. And the thing is I would go and it became such a routine that I would spend like $5 a day at Starbucks and not think twice about it. I'm just like, okay, great. Like, and sometimes I think there are some days where I like needed a coffee push at like, I need my 2 o'clock. So I go and I spend another $5 or whatever at Starbucks. And it's so funny because when I sat down and this was actually, I was really lucky to have a great condo. I was living with my sister for a few years and it was up really, really high in Toronto. So I was paying like nothing. But it was exhausting. I was spending hours in traffic. It was impossible. I was working mostly downtown and sometimes I was going into Oakville. So it just made it impossible. So I needed to move. I knew where I wanted to move, but the problem is the rent was so much higher. So when I was sitting, and this was about a year before I ended up moving, I was sitting down and actually actually running through every single dollar. Cause I know my big purchases and I would be very careful and frugal with those, but it was those everyday purchases I wasn't thinking twice about. It's the
And
same
that's
thing.
what
My
gets you.
grocery.
That's what gets you.
Exactly. And it was my grocery shop that would take like, $200 when it could have, when half the food I wouldn't eat. So it was better to go to the grocery store twice a week and buy fresh stuff and spend half of that than to, do my once a week $200 one. And the Starbucks, and holy boy, did that cost so much. So I'm like, all right, that's like the first thing that's got to go. I make coffee at home. And then I was all about like the iced drinks. Okay. I can make ice myself in my freezer. I can, do a cold brew myself and put it in my fridge. Like, this is all the stuff that I really, really cut back on. I mean, one thing that I do buy is I really like these pre-cold brew set ones that are like $5 at Metro. But even then I get 4 days out of them when I would go and spend for one drink $5, right?
So what's happening is you're owning up to what you're spending. See, I've said this before, right? People will say to me, oh, I make all this money and I have no idea where it goes. And yeah, you know what the big stuff is. You know what the mortgage, the car payment, the insurance, rent, property tax. You know what your big purchases are, and you know when they come out every month, right? Yeah. It's the little things that slip through your fingers. My neighbor knocks on my door with Girl Scout cookies. I don't want the cookies, but it's my neighbor, so here's $5, right?
I'll take any of those cookies.
Or I'll save them for Christmas, right? Save them for Christmas. But the reality is that it's the little things that get you. And, again, big budgeting tip is, I'm not saying don't go to Starbucks every day. I'm not saying don't get your mocha frappuccino with coconut or whatever, right? In the summertime. I'm not saying don't do that. What I'm saying is own up to it. Put it in your budget and say, and really the cool thing, there's so many tools out there now. Like my online banking will give me an itemized list of what I spend my money on, both on my Visa or on my debit. You can use a mint.com. Again, I'm not advocating one way or the other for it. I'm just saying the tool is out there, right?
I have actually a budgeting app that puts me where I put all of my expenses, and then I can input whatever, which is you do have to put a little more effort into it. So like every time I spend $5 or whatever. And I also know what's something that's really cool about it is that it averages out how much money I have a day to spend. So if I don't spend up, it'll take that whatever, $30 and then put it the next day. And then, I have $60. So then when I do like a grocery shop and I have like 200 on that limit, then I know how much I can spend. And and I put in all of my savings. I put in all of my insurance that I have to pay, all of my rent, all of that goes in. And then I know how much I have a day, and it lets me know kind of where I am and how much spendable money I have left, which is really cool.
Listen, financial planning, retirement is easy when you spend less than you make. Mm-hmm. So that's the secret. Like the secret to sort of my success, or the success of any financial consultant, is if you work with a client that spends less than they make, you're fine. It's when you work with clients that spend more than you make, and you've got to bring them to ground zero. We had a client I'll never forget. She was one of my favorite clients to work with. And we met her back in 2011 or 12. And it was a dog's breakfast. Like, she didn't know whether she's coming or going, lots of debt here, there, and everywhere. And my associate advisor, Karen, who was working with me at the time, who's now in Windsor, she worked with this lady every month. Once a month, she would come in and they would do exactly that. Okay, bring in your Visa statement, bring in your bank statement, bring in this, bring in that. And let me tell you, it took 3 years, but she got out of debt. She started saving money. She was able to leave her job at the hospital and open her own practice. Wow. And then Karen moved to Windsor at that point because her family was from there. She and her husband had a baby. There was an opportunity for a bit of a better job and just whatever. Right? So she took it, right? And I worked with her and we got it for her. So it was great. Love her to death. So hi, Karen, if you're listening, which I know you are. And then the client came to me and said, okay, well, I've been working with Karen for 3 years. What do I do now? I said, now you get me, right? It's a different level of coaching, I said to her, because before you worked with somebody who was a specialist in budgeting that helped you get to ground zero. Well, you're there. We have a debt management program in place. We have budgeting, savings program in place. Your insurance is locked down. You know, you're spending less than you make, so your habits have been, fixed. And she did that on her own, by the way. Karen didn't sit there and say, don't go to Starbucks, right? Because again, my philosophy has always been, you earned it, you could spend it. I'm not going to stop you. You just have to own up to it, right? And then what I said to her was, now that you're a business owner, I can work with you at the next level on how to use your corporation to your advantage, how to pay less tax, how to flow money through your corporation in the most efficient way so you keep more of your money, how you use your corporation as a retirement tool. And this is just one example, right? So, I'm a huge believer in different levels of coaching. And sometimes advisors can take clients to a certain point, and then after that, they can't do much for them anymore, right? And then you need somebody, but it's no different than my kids coach in baseball, or a hockey coach, or, as you move through the ranks, you don't want the coach of the Leafs coaching your kid's Pee-wee team, and you don't want the dad on your kid's Pee-wee team coaching the Leafs. Although some years that's what it feels like, right? So, when it comes to budgeting, you've got to be in tune with it, and it's work, right? So if you're sitting there thinking to yourself, man, I feel like I'm drowning, I feel like I can't get ahead, chances are it's one or two little adjustments that you can make. But here's the thing. Have you ever driven a car where the alignment was off?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah. So what happens, right? The steering wheel moves a little to the right, so you have to hold it a little more to the left. Yeah. And you get used to driving like that. And then you finally fix the alignment. I remember my mom's car growing up. I would drive my mom's car and her alignment was always off. So I had to always to the left, right? Well, one day she fixed the alignment and didn't tell me. So I'm so used to doing this. Well, the car starts veering. I'm like, what's going on? And she's like, oh, I fixed the alignment. I'm like, oh, thanks for telling me. But we get so used to and so complacent with the status quo.
Yeah.
And you know what? You have the choice. You have the power to say no more. I'm done with that. I'm going to start spending less than I earn. I'm going to start focusing on my retirement. I'm going to start with the end in mind that we talked about last time. And you know what? It might mean instead of $3 at Starbucks for that grande dark roast, you're going to McDonald's and you're getting the $2 grande dark
or the
roast.
$1. Wasn't there a month that coffee goes for $1 at McDonald's?
I love McDonald's coffee. It's. I mean, I don't eat at McDonald's, but their coffee is off the charts good. And it's so funny. If I go to Starbucks and I ask for a large dark coffee, it's $3 and they'll put the honey in for me.
The venti, in case you were wondering.
What's that?
The venti. That's what they call it.
I always say the big one. Just give me the big one. Not the middle one, not the small one.
Trenta. Do you want the extra large though? That's a Trenta.
No, I just want the big one.
I'm very versed in Starbucks.
Yeah, I apparently so. I'll come to you for, maybe we should offer lessons to the people out there. But what's interesting is that at McDonald's, that same coffee is $2, but I got to put the honey in myself. So, how lazy do I feel and how lazy do I not feel, right? When I'm going through the drive-thru.
Well, and how important that making those adjustments are, right? Like it's not easy. I mean, gosh, like especially a lot of people have felt this during the pandemic. Anyone who's been laid off all of a sudden, and I had a moment of that being like, my life is significantly, I mean, it has significantly changed. Luckily, I was able to change it in a positive way, but it very much was like, oh my gosh. Not everybody's
had that luxury.
And not everyone has had that luxury. And that has been, and it's been incredibly difficult for people having to adjust, but it's possible, right? And that's the thing, is that regardless of how deep in the hole you think you are, there are ways out, and there are adjustments that you can make to get yourself out of it.
And what's interesting is once we get to go out and play again, like once the vaccinations have rolled through, and once, the world is comfortable with going back to, somewhat what we were used to a year ago, there's going to be adjustments both ways. So while some people's incomes have dropped because they're getting the CERB and they're like, I'm not making as much as I used to, but at least I'm getting something, and I've learned to live off less, right? There are other people that have gone in the reverse. They're actually making more money than they were before because of the CERB. And now they've got to adjust back down.
Yeah.
Right. So, and while some people will be like, oh, it must be nice, the vacation's over, they're going to go back to work, all that bias is not what we're talking about. What we're talking about is the adjustments people are going to have to make when it comes to what they're spending. Now, if you're the person out there that got laid off, and I'm sorry to hear that, and I hope you get back to work soon as possible, but you're getting the CERB and your income has dropped, well, maybe now is the time to take a look and go, hey, you know what? I've been able to live off this. Not at the lifestyle level I was at, but I've sort of made do, right? When you go back to work now, I don't know, do we go nuts and go, now I can travel, now I can shop because I'm making more money again? Or do we say, hey, you know what? I was living off the CERB before and doing okay. Maybe what I do now is I take half the difference. So instead of spending all the difference, maybe I take half. So let's say instead of $2,000 a month, now I'm making $4,000 a month. We're making numbers up, right?
Yeah.
So maybe what we do is go, okay, well, if I can live off $2,000 a month, I've proven that. It's kind of boring and I'm watching a lot of Netflix, but it's what we're doing. I'm now making $4,000 a month because I'm back to work. Maybe I can save $1,000 a month, right? And instead of take a lifestyle from 2 to 4, we go from 2 to 3. You're still, you're still jumping up a little bit. You still have some extra money now to do some of the things you couldn't do before. But maybe now's the time to hit that reset button.
Do you know what's interesting though is what I've heard a lot is there's a lot of people who are saving so much money on, well, especially kind of in my hood, my hipster. I like to think I'm a hipster sometimes, not at all. In my area, I hear from a lot of people my age is that because they're not going out, because they've saved so much money this last year because they're not going in, they're not ordering as much takeout. They're not going out to dinner as much.
More.
They're cooking more. They're saving money in different ways by just purely not going out or like drinking or spending money on random things that they were able to get their down payment for a house or,
Wonderful. You know what?
Yeah.
My vice pre-COVID was going out to eat, right? Social guy. People are like, hey, let's go for drinks. Hey, let's go for this. Hey, let's go watch the game. Sure. Right.
Yeah.
I mean, such a huge difference in my bank account, not going out to eat and staying home and also being diligent about not ordering in. Because listen, whether you order in, you go out to eat, you're spending an inflated amount of money to not have to cook. That's basically what you're doing. You're like, I don't feel like cooking, so I'm going to not cook and I'm going to go out and eat. Right? Or I'm going to order in because I don't feel like cooking. But I tell you, I mean, I'm proud of the fact that, since April, I have not, I think the boys and I have ordered in like 3 times.
Yeah.
Right. So it's like Skip the Dishes doesn't know my address. Like
I did order. I've ordered a little bit, but I've made
there's nothing wrong with it. I'm not saying.
No, exactly. And I've also split. It's been like date nights type of thing. So I probably ordered in a bit more. But
you're owning up to it
I also am very careful. I'm not ordering as much. My first option isn't to order in now, when before the life, like I would come home. I would honestly come home, be so tired. It was 7 o'clock at night. And I'm like, the last thing I want to do is cook. But now I've made sure. Now I've made sure I actually plan out the nights that I order out. And then my boyfriend and I have have made it that we do not order out without each other, unless it's like a dire situation. Like that is the one thing that's helping us both not spend money on takeout is like, okay, we can't order it together. And then we plan out the days we're going to order out or order in.
Yeah. I'm telling you, 90% of the battle is just making sure you live within your means. Making sure you've got a pulse on what your spending is like. And it's when you don't have that pulse, one tip I can give you, or another tip I can give you is, I only have money come out of my account twice a month. That's it. So the third of the month, my mortgage, my car payment, anything I can't put on my credit card comes out on the third through pre-authorized. And then everything else goes on my credit card. whether it's my PC MasterCard and I'm collecting optimum points. By the way, I'm almost at 900,000.
Gotta get those points.
Yeah, and or I'm using my Visa, whatever. My Visa and my MasterCard get paid on the 20th of the month, automatically set up that way. So I know that money only comes out twice. So if it's the 13th of the month, for example, and I want to buy a sweater because I'm at the mall and I like it and it fits and it's great and I want it, I know I can buy it because I don't have to worry, oh, is today when the car payment comes out? Is it tomorrow? Am I going to have enough? I don't have that added level of stress because I've organized my account in such a way that money only comes out twice a month, right? And my corporate account is the same. My, payroll, rent, other expenses come out twice a month. And that's it. So, right? So being organized, listen, and not everyone's organized, and I get that. It's not people's nature or personality.
It's hard. It's hard.
It is. It can be very difficult, right? So, if you don't have your finger on the pulse, if you are not in tune with your finances, it is so easy to overspend. And listen, people will think, oh, it's okay. I make tons of money. I'll out earn the problem. They make enough money that they can be frivolous. They can not worry about budgeting because the cushion is so big, right? I mean, if let's say it costs, I don't know, 60 grand a year to run your household, 5 grand a month, and you're making 300 grand, either individually or with your partner, it's not going to be hard to stay within a budget, right? I mean, if you're going to overspend when the cushion is that big, then you've got some spending issues, right? But if you're making 80 grand and your expenses are 60 grand, it's going to be tight, right? Mm-hmm. That's where you've got to be a little more diligent and keep your finger on it. I mean, we've helped so many people get to what I call ground zero, where they feel like they're drowning. They feel like, oh, I make all this money. We talked in the last podcast about my buddy who's in his early 40s who hasn't saved for retirement yet, right? I get so many people around that stage that come to me and they hit 40 and, maybe they've split from their spouse and they're like, oh my God, what am I going to do now? Well, you've got 20, 25 years. And while that sounds like a lot of time in your head, it's not. It goes like that. And the next thing you know, it's, now keep in mind, right? There's got to be balance. You can't just survive, right? I mean, I know people that won't spend a dime. They'll scrimp and scrape and save every little thing and not have any fun and not go out and not treat themselves and not do anything because they want to have a nice retirement. Well, hey, folks, 1 out of 4 people don't make it to 65 in Canada. In the US, I'm sure the numbers are very, very similar. Whereas I've said it before, 25% of women and 13% of men will make it past the age of 95. And that number is going to grow. We talked a lot about demographics in the last podcast.
Yeah.
So, you've got to have balance. You've got to save, you've got to pay down debt, and you've got to have a little bit of fun too, because quality of life is so important.
So important.
Surviving is not living. It's just surviving. It's just getting by. So if, just to sort of, I guess we should wrap it up, but, I've got lately, especially with the pandemic, a lot more people in their 20s and early 30s that are coming to me saying, hey, I want to make sure that I'm set up. I want to make sure if something like this happens again, I don't miss a beat. Well, I want to start to create those good habits now. How do I do it? And we can help, right? Again, go to behindthevault.net and sign up for one of our consultations. The first consult's free. I'm not going to charge you for it, right? So, and then a basic plan is like really inexpensive. I think we're only charging like $99, and normally financial consultants will charge thousands, for a full plan. So,
and I mean, it's never too late. And if there's a time that is going to make you really think about your future, and I did mention this a lot in the last podcast, was a pandemic. I was one of those people that was like, what am I going to do if I don't find another career?
Right. Well, the big problem with the pandemic is that at the beginning of the pandemic, there was no timeline. If you recall last year around this time when things were starting to really.
Yeah, we're almost a year.
Right. When things were really starting to people were starting to wake up to the problems that we were having, governments were like, oh, we're just going to shut down for a couple weeks. A couple weeks more. A couple weeks more. Well, it feels like we're being strung along here, right? Feels like we're being strung along. Well, if this were to ever happen again, God forbid it doesn't. But if it were ever happen again, I think people are going to be like, yeah, it's not going to be 2-3 weeks. It's going to be a year, 18 months. Here we go again. But at least the frame of mind they're in is going to be different. Thailand, one of my best friends lives in Australia. He married a girl who's from Thailand, and they had a baby last December. Last year, sorry, not the year before the pandemic.
Okay.
Well, when China went through their issues, Thailand shut down right away because they got hit so hard with SARS in 2003. They were already mentally prepared, and they were like, nope, shut it down. And I think by July of last year, they had like, I don't know, a couple hundred cases. Like it was nothing for a country with, I think, 10 or 11, 12 million people, right? My buddy was telling me this, and I was like, oh my goodness, right? Some countries handled it obviously better than others, but they were prepared because they had gone through something very similar, you know,
before,
almost 2 decades ago, right? So it's never a bad time to take a positive step when it comes to your finances. It's never like you got to do it, right? You got to do it. You can't depend on the government. You can't depend on anybody else. You can't say, oh, someone will take care of me later. Don't worry.
No, you can't depend on that,
now.
right? You never know what's going to happen, and you really gotta focus it. So I think this is the perfect time to end our second podcast.
All right.
Well, you're going to go.
Thank you very much. And you've been behind the vault.
Yeah. See you next time.
See you next time.